You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another. You shall do no injustice in judgment, in measurement of length, weight, or volume. You shall have honest scales, honest weights, an honest ephah, and an honest hin. You shall not have in your bag differing weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect and a just weight, a perfect and a just measure. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. Hello, and welcome to Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Today we're going to talk about justice, being fair and consistent, being honest in our dealings with one another. Because that's what God tells us to do. And if God tells us to do that, then it is good and just and righteous. And we know this. Even non-Christians know this. Law given by God is good and just and righteous. Whatever people may want to believe today, we are in a Christian nation founded on Judeo-Christian values. And we, not just us here in America, but the Western world, we've reaped the benefits of that, on a system built on God's law. And I grew up a heathen, if you've heard my testimony before. And I probably didn't even realize it. But I also grew up and lived in a society before I realized it that were based on those same values. You shall not steal. Right? The fact that you have rights to property that you own. Even growing up a heathen, I appreciated that. I remember I was really into fishing. I would love to go fishing in the small town in the Tidewater, Mid-Atlantic, where I grew up. There was a good fishing opportunity. There was a river not close by, a bay on one side, and an ocean on the other. We're on a peninsula. I love to fish. I love spending my time out in nature fishing. And I had accumulated quite a bit of fishing stuff, working jobs and doing this thing and that thing. Doing landscaping, cutting grass, whatever manner of jobs as a young boy. And I had accumulated quite a bit of fishing stuff, and somebody stole it. They stole it off the front porch. And that really saddened me. That really angered me. Why? Because we know that this law is true. We know that this law is good and just. That you shouldn't steal. I think even the staunchest atheist would concede this, although they probably couldn't explain it in a justifiable way from their worldview. They don't think there's an objective truth, a creator that dictates right and wrong. You just went up to them and took their car, pushed them out of their car and took their car. They said you can't do that, and you say, why not? Because it's stealing, and stealing is wrong. Yeah, I agree. Says who? Says God. But to them, they might say, well, it's against the law. Well, what if I just passed another law that said cars are no longer personal property? They're no longer personal real property. They're communal, so I can just take your car whenever I want. I doubt they'd be on board with that, even though from their worldview, it would be totally congruent with their worldview, because an atheist couldn't admit with their worldview that there is an objective right and wrong. And this whole thing today about subjective truth. Truth is whatever I want it to be. I want this show to stay kid-friendly, but what if a man says, you know what, I want to use that woman's body against her will. I believe that's what's best for me. And I believe deep down that's what's best for her. That's what I believe. That's my subjective truth. So it's right because I make it right. No, it's wrong. You know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. The staunchest atheist knows that it's wrong. It's malum in se. It's evil by nature. You know how we know that? Because God tells us that, and we are made in the image of God. He tells us what's right and wrong, and deep down we know it. We know it. You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another. You shall not have in your bag differing weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect and a just weight, and a perfect and a just measure. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. You shall do no injustice in judgment in measurements of length, weight, or volume. Being fair and consistent. Even the Marine Corps. Now, there was probably a time where the Marine Corps was a fairly Christian organization. But I can tell you, my time when I served in the Marine Corps, and this would have been the early aughts to the mid-aughts, is very much a secular organization. But very long ago, I learned the 14 leadership traits. There's an acronym for those. I think I still remember every single one verbatim, but the acronym is thus: JJ did tie buckle. The first and second, the J and the J, are justice and judgment. Justice, being fair and consistent. Judgment, to consider all facts and make a correct decision. Even in a secular organization like that, even that, you see the value of that for a leader. You see the value of justice for a leader. And the Marine Corps didn't come up with that, right? That's written in God's law. We see this in a great leader in the Bible, David. We see this in one of the Psalms. He who rules over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. He shall be like the light of the morning when the sun rises. He who rules over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. He shall be like the light of the morning when the sun rises. You want an organization to go south real quick. You want it to go downhill. Be the leader of that organization, or have leadership in that organization that is not fair and consistent. Two people do the same thing, and because the leader likes one, he gives them a slap on the wrist, and the other one, even though it's both their first offense, the other guy that he doesn't like, he throws the book at them. Right? That's not fair and consistent. Even the Marine Corps, who I would submit at this point is very secular, still sees the wisdom in that for an organization to run well, and for our entire world to run well. I submit we should turn back to the rules and laws of God, because they are good and just for running a society, a culture, your very own life, your life. And I see us, sadly, I think, getting away from this in culture. It should be fair and consistent. It isn't always. The further we get away from God's rules and start making our own rules, the more injustice I think we will see. There certainly has been some staunch racism in the past. That was wrong. To say that somebody has less rights because of the color of their skin is wrong. It's malum in se. We are all sons of Adam. We were all made by God. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. Equal. I could see how, and I have seen how in the past, through the unproven theory, because you can't repeat it, you can't demonstrate it, you can't prove it, of evolution, that you can have racism. You could think that one race is more highly evolved than another. That's garbage. If you look at it from a biblical principle worldview, we are all sons of Adam. We are all made in the image of God. And yeah, we are different. We look different. But as far as our human rights go and our justice and our equal protection under the law, that is good and right and just. We see now things that are creeping in that are unjust. Like Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Black lives do matter. So do white lives. But what would happen if there was a bunch of demonstrators, white lives matter? Right? It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be equal in the eyes of our culture. But it should be. How about just lives matter? Human life matters. If Black lives matter, what about Black lives in the womb of the mother? Don't those lives matter? Where is the equal protection under the law? Where is the justice, being fair and consistent? And one might argue, especially, I think some today. Those are Old Testament laws and no longer apply. And I would say, with a straight face, tell me that justice and equal weights and equal measures don't apply today. With a straight face, tell me that that's old stuff that doesn't apply anymore. What if there was a gas station and the car in front of you pulled up and their price of gas was $2, and you pulled up, and for whatever reason, not because it was time to change the gas price, but just because they didn't like your truck, the price of gas for you is $5.99 a gallon, right? That would anger you, and it should, because it's not equal. It's not equal weights and equal measures. If this most financially well-off 10th generation Harvard legacy law student decides he wants to go out and play Grand Theft Auto in real life and steal somebody's car, and the poorest inner city ghetto son of two alcoholic parents living on the streets steals a car, it's still theft. It's still, depending on your jurisdiction, but Grand Theft Auto, it's theft. It's stealing. It is wrong. And although sadly I would probably admit that in today's culture they probably would receive different penalties, they shouldn't. They should receive the same penalty, and we should see the wisdom of that. If a man steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If the thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. If the sun has risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. He should make full restitution. If he has nothing, he shall be sold for his theft. If the theft is certainly found alive in his hand, whether it is an ox or donkey or sheep, he shall restore double. Now you could apply that pretty easily to the scenario we just said. If they stole that car and totaled it, then they have to restore 5-fold or 4-fold. If they just took it for a drive and got out, then they restore double. To the victim. And here's a thing that I guess would be a deeper dive into the law. But in general, the restitution was made to the victim, right? Because that's who was wronged. Only if they could find no relative or something like that was it given to the priest, the authority. Nowadays, if people do wrong in general, they pay the fine to the state, to the authority first. But there should be equal. 5 ox for an ox, 4 sheep for a sheep. If the theft is certainly found alive, they shall restore double. Equal. Justice. Equal, right? Not if you're from the tribe of Dan and they're from the tribe of Dan, because this was this is written at a tribal time. If you're both Danites, then it's not that big a deal, just a slap on the wrist. Oh, but if it was somebody from the tribe of Asher, he better pay 10 ox. No, it's equal. It's equal, and it should still be equal. And you might be agreeing with this. I hope you're agreeing with this. Yeah. But let's look at the plank in our own eye. Do we do that, or do we show partiality? Do you behave differently? I'm not talking about who you're friends with or that, but for equal justice. Like this guy's got a MAGA sticker and drives a lifted truck. He's my kind of guy. I'm going to give him a deal. But 3 oxen for him. But this person, they got a Bernie Sanders sticker. I'm going to make them feel the burn. 6 ox for them. Right? That's not equal. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and forget the plank in your own eye? Don't be a hypocrite. Now, I think we should stand up to injustice, and I think we should see the wrongs in injustice. But going to remind you of the words that were told to Peter by Jesus Christ himself when Peter was kind of worried about what to do about Judas. Judas had betrayed Jesus. Right, this is post Jesus dying and rising from the dead. Right, he had been driven through his hands and his feet. He had been spit on and whipped for your sin and for my sin. But he was betrayed by Judas. And Peter comes to him. What do we do about Judas? Worried about what do we do about this guy? And Jesus says to him, "What is that to you? You follow me." You can spend your life worrying about what other people have done wrong, or you can live right. You follow Christ. You follow Christ. You do what you're supposed to do. You be fair and just in your dealings. You have in your bag equal weights. You have in your house equal measures. You follow what is written. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. Because somebody has money does not make them right, and because somebody lacks money does not make them wrong, or vice versa. Now, I'm not talking about charity. Charity and their special provisions given for widows and orphans, but that doesn't make it okay for them to steal. Equal justice, fair and consistent. You be that light. You talk about being holy, standing out, being set apart in a corrupt world, in a corrupt society, where there's so much injustice, where there's so much partiality. You be fair and consistent. You want to shine like a light? That's not the only way, but that's a good way to stand out in this world, in this culture, is to be fair and just and consistent. To judge rightly, to consider all facts and make a correct decision. To be fair and consistent. If you are a leader, he who rules over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. And being a leader of an organization, I don't often mention my bio in this podcast, but I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. I was in charge of quite a few men. Very, very different backgrounds. I was in charge of hiring the vast majority of them. Very, very different backgrounds. And I wasn't the nicest of leaders. I'm going to be honest. Our job was very serious, and I took it seriously. And I would surmise many of them probably didn't like me very much. And that's okay. But I think if you asked them, even the ones that got in trouble, as far as it depended on me, I was fair and consistent. We let guys go, we let men go that I really liked. And I remember a situation where we kept somebody that I really didn't honestly like, personally. But that's not how you should deal with people. You should be fair and just and consistent. You should do it because God says so, but you will also reap very real benefits in this world. Not all the time. Sometimes you'll be persecuted for it. But it is good to be a fair and just leader. He who rules over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. He shall be like the light of the morning when the sun rises. If you're over men, they should be able to know, as good as we can as fallible human beings, that they're going to get fair and equal treatment in your organization, whatever that is. Again, you want to be set apart in this world. That's what holy means. You want to be different. Be just. Be fair. Like the Bible says, do all things as if you're doing them to the Lord, heartily, as if you're doing them to the Lord, because God says so. Even if you don't like somebody, that doesn't mean you slam them with an unequal punishment. Just because you really like somebody, that doesn't mean you don't punish them for something they did wrong. Think about if I had 2 sons. I don't, but are you? Let's say somebody has 2 sons, and they have a favorite. It'd be one thing for them to have a favorite. Like they identify more, they have more in common, they like more of the same things when the child started to have its own kind of distinct personality to be realized in the world. Like they like the same things, they both like hunting and fishing. And the other boy's into, other stuff. He's into math and calculus and that kind of stuff. And the father doesn't really identify with him as much. Well, let's say they both, the son that he likes one week steals a candy bar. He says, son, that was wrong. Let's go return it. And he goes and return it, and he's a little bit embarrassed, and that's his punishment. The next week, the son that he really doesn't identify with, is not his favorite, steals a candy bar. And he takes the belt to him. And then he grounds him for 2 weeks. That's not fair and just. You don't give somebody a different punishment. Something is not right or wrong based on whether you like them or not. It's right or wrong based on whether God says it's wrong or not. That punishment should be the same because it's the same crime. And I think we know deep down in our heart that that's right and true and just. And although sometimes we may not like it, especially if we're on the receiving end of wrath, of punishment, of judgment, we should appreciate it when it's fair and consistent. And again, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and forget the plank in your own eye? Let us take care of the planks in our eyes. Let us see clearly. Let us remove what's in our eyes to see clearly. To strip away all these categories and things in society, and whether somebody's red or blue or black or white. Justice and judgment should be the same. You shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. You shall not have in your bag differing weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect and a just weight, and a perfect and a just measure. You shall do no injustice in judgment and measurements of length, weight, or volume. You shall have honest scales, honest weights, an honest ephah, and an honest hin. Again, if you think this stuff doesn't apply, I actually started, by God's grace, this thinking about this sermon, started out with James. James is very, very late in the Bible, close to Revelation. If you think this stuff no longer applies, you don't have to be fair and consistent. Again, I think if you really examine yourself, be circumspect, and examine your heart on that, you would admit that we're all supposed to be fair and consistent in our dealings. But let's go to James, very much after Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and see if this is still in play. James. Chapter 1, it says this, "But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does." And in chapter 2, "My brethren, do not hold the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with partiality. For if there should come into your assembly a man with gold rings and fine apparel, and there should also come in a poor man in filthy clothes, and you pay attention to the one wearing the fine clothes, and say to him, 'You sit here in a good place,' and say to the poor man, 'You stand there,' or 'Sit here at my footstool,' have you not shown partiality among yourselves, and become judges with evil thoughts? Listen, my beloved brethren, has God not chosen the poor of this world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor man. Do not the rich oppress you and drag you into courts? Do they not blaspheme the noble name by which you were called? If you really fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, 'You shall love your neighbor as yourself,' you do well. But if you show partiality, you commit sin, and are convicted by the law as transgressors." So there's James, brother of Jesus, post Jesus Christ's death and resurrection, post the book of Acts. Still thinks this is very much in play and applicable to us as Christians today. Do not show partiality. Let me ask you this, if you attend a church regularly. If John the Baptist walked in, of whom it said, "What did you go out to the wilderness to see? A man in fine clothing or soft clothing, soft raiment, depending on the translation. No, a prophet. If a man came in with camel's hair and sat down in a pew with a bowl full of locusts and started eating them, would you welcome him into your congregation? Do not show partiality. Let's look to some of Jesus' own words. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than the others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Whew. How's that for being humbled by the King of Kings and Lord of Lords? Right, the rest of the world, even the rest of the world, even I would submit the staunchest atheist probably loves and takes care of their family, their friends, people that they love. Again, be better than that. Be better. Be light and salt in this world. Be perfect as your Heavenly Father is perfect. By being like Christ, the perfect man. He is our example. And if he is perfect, and showing partiality is sin, which we just read from James, then obviously Jesus never showed partiality. We must be fair and consistent. Jesus embodied that. If Jesus could be whipped and spit on and insulted, scourged, nailed to a piece of wood to hang and die, and he could be impartial, that should encourage us to be like him. He is our example, our living hope. For he became sin who knew no sin, that we might become the righteousness of God in him. Righteous. Let us look at Galatians 5. For you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Only do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another. Or how about this from Romans chapter 12? Owe no one anything except to love one another, for he who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet, and if there is any other commandment, are all summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law. Love is the fulfillment of the law. God is love. God created everything. He created this earth. He designed it to work a certain way. He designed us to interact with him and with each other a certain way. And we should stick to his design. He tells us how to love him and how to love our neighbor. You see, love is not whatever you want it to be. It's not whatever you feel. Coveting your neighbor's stuff and then stealing it, saying, my neighbor has 3 really nice cars and I have an old beat up car. I'm going to take one of his cars. He has more than he needs. That's right and just, but it's not. It's coveting your neighbor's stuff and then stealing it. It is wrong. Likewise, committing adultery, no matter how you both may feel, is wrong. It's evil. It's malum and say it's wrong because God says it's wrong. That doesn't change. He tells us how to love. And to think that we no better than God is just the epitome of foolishness and hubris, and it's sin. God doesn't change. We just read Galatians and Romans and James. Let's look to Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. What does he say when he's asked about the commandments? The first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment, and the second like it is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Right? That's the Word. Jesus was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That comes out of love your neighbor as yourself. That comes out of Leviticus 19. Let's look there. You shall not swear by my name falsely, nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. You shall not cheat your neighbor, nor rob him. The wages of him who is hired shall not remain with you all night until morning. You shall not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but shall fear your God. I am the Lord. You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. In righteousness you shall judge your neighbor. You shall not go about as a talebearer among your people, nor shall you take a stand against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your neighbor, and not bear sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Men, let us do what Jesus says and love our neighbor as ourselves, and doing it the way that God says to do it, justly, fairly. Let us take planks out of our eyes. Let us be salt and light in this world. Let us seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Let us love God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and with all our strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And God, He is love, for it is written very simply in the Bible, God is love. He is the author of it. We don't get to change the definition of love and what love is. God defines love, because God is love. On that defining what love is, how to love God and love our neighbor, I'm gonna close with the 10 Commandments. And I want to say thanks for listening, and have a blessed day. The 10 Commandments recited. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children, to the 3rd and 4th generation to those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands to those who love me and keep my commandments. Do not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. The Ten Commandments given to Moses, recorded in Exodus chapter 20.